Hello and welcome to Talking Tunes, the show where an entitled young fella what's it like myself shares my unwanted opinion with you guys on the internet. So today we're covering Zakk Wylde rejoining Ozzy Osbourne for his next solo album. Tobias Forge reveals the concept for the next Ghost album, and Kanye West and Marilyn Manson appear to be friends now, and they're praying together, so that's a thing. Time to crack on. First up, Zakk Wylde is playing with Ozzy again. So this is obviously good news. Zakk has been Ozzy's longtime solo guitarist for I think he's actually the fourth one, but he's the one that stuck. So he's played a lot of the guitar and a lot of the classic solo Ozzy things that you've heard. And I didn't even realise until this got announced that he wasn't present on the previous album, or Ordinary Man, that came out 2020. We got this information from a podcast called The Diary of the Madman, which is a podcast completely about Ozzy Osbourne. I would say check that one out, but I'm dubious. But so they reached out to Ozzy Osbourne's official accounts on social media and apparently asked whether or not Zakk would be playing on this album, to which they responded, I can read as quote, "Yes, Zakk plays all of the rhythm guitars on the new album. He was home from tour this time, unlike when I did Ordinary Man." I do really enjoy that this account tries to make it sound like it's actually coming from the mouth of Ozzy Osbourne. I find that very, very doubtful. I get the feeling the man struggles with a calculator, let alone social media. So, I enjoy the illusion, though, that everything being kept together. Kayfabe is not dead, that's what they'll say. But yeah, so apparently Zakk must have been on tour and as a result missed doing Ordinary Man. Which is a shame, but I will say that I actually very much like that album, like a lot more than I thought I was going to. I got put onto Ordinary Man because the lineup of musicians is really, really good. You had Chad Smith on drums, Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses on the bass. It sounded like pretty much a win-win for me, so I jumped in there, and it was really good. There's a collaboration with Elton John on that album, which is surprisingly effective, quite poignant actually, because it's sort of two famously messed up rock stars towards the end of their sort of twilight years, sort of singing about their mistakes and sort of coming towards the end of their lives, which is a little bit somber, but it is a good song. You'd be amazed at how well their voices gel together. But the other big weird collaboration on the previous album is Post Malone. Apparently that came about because Ozzy recorded Take What You Want From Me as a sample along with Travis Scott on Post Malone's album at the time, and Andrew Watt is Post Malone's longtime producer, guitarist, all-round everything guy, and apparently Watt managed to get on quite well with Ozzy, and as a result ended up doing the majority of the guitar work, well, most of the writing at least for it, on the previous album, locked in a room with Chad and Duff for 3 days, and apparently they more or less wrote the entirety of the last album. So I'm quite happy to see him back. I don't know, there's not been any confirmation that Duff or Chad will be back for this album, but I think they'd be making quite a big mistake if they didn't, honestly. I didn't know much about Andrew Watt. Apparently he's in a band called California Breed. It's him and it's John Bonham's son, Jason Bonham, which I guess is pretty good pedigree. He's sort of been around the scene. And it's interesting, I didn't realise until afterwards that on the previous album, Ordinary Man, Slash and Tom Morello both also play in it, which is kind of cool. Slash specifically in the song Ordinary Man. They've got quite a high pedigree of people, but also a lot of people assumed that the Ordinary Man was probably going to be Ozzy's last album. He sang like it was, and obviously prior to that, Sabbath had just announced their farewell tour, which doesn't seem to be very farewell-y at all. They seem to be taking a little bit of a note out of the Def Leppard book of retiring and then not retiring and retiring and not retiring, but that's kind of fine with me as long as Ozzy can keep it consistent. I did see him at Download with Sabbath a few years back, and honestly, I wasn't that impressed. I thought he was a bit glassy-eyed, didn't seem that enthusiastic, didn't seem to even really know where he was. But I have heard that he seems to have got himself together a little bit more since then, and he's done some good shows. So as long as he's able to continue to put out good music, I'm quite happy with it, because I did actually really like the last one. The final detail for this album is that we've got collaborations with Tony Iommi, obviously long-term Black Sabbath guitarist. We've also got Eric Clapton. That's an interesting choice. As much as he's a fantastic guitarist and musician, he's a little bit of a weird horse to hitch your wagon to at the moment. I know he's come up with some anti-mask, anti-vax stuff, and has just generally had a history of being a little bit of a liability. So interested to see where that one goes. And also Jeff Beck. So all strong choices, very good guitarist. So I guess we'll see. There's no details yet as to when the album is going to be coming out. Don't you worry, I'll make sure you know when I do. Oh, come here. Secondly, Tobias Forge, in another interview, has revealed the concept for his new album coming out. We've got the first single, it was Hunter's Moon. I've talked about that ad nauseum already, but he's now talking thematically about the entire thing, which is always interesting with him because he's very story-based person. I know he's in the past talked about the idea of having multiple stages and like a story for each show and becoming almost like an opera or a musical even with Ghost. So I know he's very deep into his themes, etc. So after Hunter's Moon, one might have assumed it was Killers or something, I don't know, but in this interview he said in 2014 he was on a tour in Seattle and he read a book which was called The Rule of Empires. Those who built them, those who endured them, and why they fall. A very epic sounding book, I will say. But he said the album is going to be more about empires and the rise and fall of the people and the politics within those. Which is interesting because Prequel, the previous album, was far more abstract in its themes. It was apparently far more about death and the sort of absolute of the end. Things like that. So he's trying to keep it less political, he said. But good luck with that. Even though, interestingly, with the previous album as well, when Prequel came out, he had only just, I think he might have even still been in the midst of his legal battles with his previous ex-bandmates, the Nameless Ghouls, and there's a couple of lines in there and a few songs that are definitely him having a stab at them and sort of treachery and things like that. So I think there's quite a lot of hidden subtext, and I do think he talks far more from the soul than you'd think for a band that is technically about Satanism. Also, weird side fact that I'd found while I was researching this news article is that Tobias Forge worked in a call center whilst coming up with the concept for Ghost. So any young musician out there right now working in the call center, it ain't all for now. You definitely got a chance. If he can do it, you can too. Finally, a slightly weird one this time, not about music being released or anything, but simply a strange collaboration and partnership coming out from Kanye. Ye, and Marilyn Manson. Go figure. So apparently Kanye started what he's calling the Sunday Service Choir, which he started in 2019. It's basically a gospel band from my understanding. I'm sorry Kanye fans out there, he's not really my cup of tea. He's an interesting bloke, but I don't pretend to like him that much. So he's got this Sunday Service Choir, which apparently he hadn't actually done a whole lot with for the previous 18 months. It formed around the same time they put out an album called Jesus is King, so I'm going to guess it was a big, push for that. The thing with Kanye is you can never quite tell whether or not he's doing it for the clout or whether or not he's just genuinely insane. I'm starting to lead more towards the insane side of things, but either way, he brought his first one back of those in 18 months, and guess who was on the stage? Marilyn Manson and Justin Bieber, clad in white, praying whilst Kanye rapped and all sorts of strange stuff. Manson wore a hood covering the bottom half of his face as well, like people wouldn't be able to recognize him from his brow, which is strange. And this is the second time that these guys have been together recently. Apparently in a recent album that Kanye released, Manson actually does some vocals too, weirdly parroting the lyric, "We all liars," and "Guess who's going to jail tonight?" Which might be quite apt if and when they ever manage to find Manson guilty of anything. That album also features the rapper Beiber, who apparently got caught out saying some homophobic comments a few years back. So it's starting to look a lot like Kanye's trying to sort of publicly rehabilitate these fallen and disgraced musical acts, which you can argue as to the sort of validity of that, as to whether or not, again, it's a publicity stunt or not. Personally, I wouldn't waste my time with a scumbag like Marilyn Manson. Not excusing homophobic comments, but that seems onto a different spectrum for what Marilyn Manson's being accused of, but we won't go into too much detail on that one, but it's not nice stuff, and if I was Kanye, I wouldn't want anything to do with him publicly or privately. That's his choice. I will say now, I do think that Ye is off his trolley, so if that's the decision he wants to make, then feel free. I don't think that Manson's coming back in the public limelight anytime soon. He released an album which did very badly, and he got dropped by his label and by management and his agents after all the allegations, which he's firmly denied. I guess innocent till proven guilty, but I believe it. As bad as that sounds. Curious whether that'll go any further or whether it really was just Kanye trying to pray for Manson. Moving on to a slightly more positive topic, it's time for Tune of the Week. This week, I've got you a Lordi song. It's called Borderline. It's just come out, and it's great. It's leaning far more into the more disco aspects of Lordi's catalogue. If you look at something like Zombimbo, where there's a lot of sort of bouncing bass and disco synth going on, which is interesting because Lordi put out an EP a month ago with 2 tracks on it, Abracadabra and something else, and they were like straight up screamo metal. Like, there was barely any synth in it. It was much heavier than I'm used to with Lordi, who I would normally expect to be quite camp, really. And I was somewhat concerned because I know they're on the, they're bringing out a new album soon. And I was kind of hoping that wasn't the direction they went, especially considering that the keyboard player is the one that's already been replaced once, and I was hoping that they hadn't had a fallout with the next one. But it doesn't seem to be the case, so they've put out this new double track, Girl in the Suitcase and Borderline, and they're great. They're really addictive. There's got some very catchy hooks in there. The lyrics they're Lordi, so they're always going to be a little bit strange, but you get what you get with Lordi. It's quite enjoyable if you like that kind of thing. So yeah, Borderline, really worth checking out, especially if you like the sort of slightly campier disco metal, which is not a sentence I thought I would say. Thank you very much for watching. We'll keep you updated with any new news coming as and when, I guess. There should be some interesting stuff just around the corner. So, until next time, I'll see you later. Bye!